Good evening. Welcome to another edition of Rugby Deconstructed, coming to you from our bunkers here in South Africa. With me in his bunker is Richard. Richard, how are you doing?
Well, thanks in yourself, Andre.
Doing very well. So we've been pestering each other to in this time of lockdown to put out maybe one or two extra podcasts, maybe not so long and short. So one of the topics that has been bugging me for quite a while, and actually is, I want to say, almost difficult to talk about because it generated a lot of debate on Twitter and other social media platforms and newspapers, and even from people who aren't even rugby watchers or fans of the game to chime in, is this concept of lad culture, LAD culture in the game. And I'm going to put my cards on the table straight from the beginning. I'm of the opinion that this made up term is actually doing rugby harm because it's painting a false narrative.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think it stems more from the other, can you say, buzzword of 2019 was toxic masculinity, and it's more it's more a subsection of that toxic masculinity threads that we had last year coming through, especially if you think about the lad culture. And as you mentioned now, I think tonight it's going to be more anecdotally than actual scientific deconstruction that we're doing. I think talking more about past experiences and perceptions. If we had to, as you say, break down lad culture and what's been going around on Twitter, it's more around the environments that's created for players and the way and player and suggesting that players' actions are like you say, it's been more motivated or suited towards a culture of or the environment they've grown up within a rugby club, for instance.
Yeah, I think we're both in agreement here, and definitely, yeah, I liked how you explained there that it's a almost like a sub section of toxic masculinity. We by no means poo-pooing the whole issue of toxic masculinity, because we're focusing specifically on the culture of rugby. And let's get to the immediate point. This all stemmed from our, I want to almost use the word sarcastically, our good friend Joe Marler, with his incident against Wales. And we all know what it is, and I don't really want to get into a long story about what he did, but what effectively happened, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, cool. What effectively happened afterwards was this social media frenzy, everybody jumping on and, criticizing the man and, saying that he should be banned and arrested and a whole bunch of other things. But I want to just narrow the focus a little bit. There were a few people, and some of them we really respect, that went out and started blaming the culture of rugby for his behavior. And I'm going to, that's the point I want to work from in how we look at this this whole thing. And for me, it's never the culture that's the issue, it's the leadership and the how the individual is allowed to get away with what he does, right or wrong, within the setup of a team. So for me, the first thing when somebody transgresses, if you've got a player that's constantly fighting or a player that bites, what is the leadership doing within the team? What is the captain of the team, the coach, the manager, the psychologist, all those, what are they doing to ensure that when players go into the field, they play the game of rugby as the way it's supposed to be played, instead of all these theatrics that take place? So, that I'd say that's the start point of looking at this whole concept of lad culture. The second thing the second thing that rose now from this lad culture is there's a lot of players and people in the world that struggle with depression and other psychological problems that don't stem from the rugby culture and don't stem from rugby. You know, and for me, the entire setup of a rugby club should be a place where you're able to go talk to your mates, and if you've got a problem, you know, you've had a fight with a girlfriend, or shit's not happening great at work, you know, business is slow, you still got that rugby club to go to where there's people that are like you or from different environments, different businesses. You know, some people might be a lawyer, some people might be construction workers, some people in retail, some people are students, but there's always somebody there that you get to talk to that could possibly help you or give you a guiding hand. And, you know, maybe I'm lucky. Maybe I've been in a club where the culture was about the family setup, you know, bringing people in, making it very welcome for you. So I don't know if you've got anything to add on that starting point there.
Yeah, no, I think okay. Our first point, as we said, where I think certain guys were bringing it on as you say, it's more of a culture thing. Was shortly after the Joe Marler incident, I also saw, and it's a rugby somebody that we also respect as an analyst of the game, who posted a clip of the Exeter Chiefs changing room when the Lions team was announced in 2017, and the players embracing and give each other these little silly, as we call it, dick flips after the announcement of guys in the team, and almost and using that as an example to say that, look, the culture in the game is wrong. Joe Marler can do it on the field. The guys do it in the dressing room. It's toxic, and I think it's getting, as you say, getting it wrong to the point where sometimes I think their own personal battles are now being said or are now being justified by saying the culture in rugby is wrong, and that's creating that problems. Getting back to, as you say, the point of leaderships and in the clubs and the situations of how the clubs can actually guide players in the right direction and give them assistance. One of the examples that we used tonight anecdotally is my first year out of university, when I was doing my internship as a biokineticist. I spent it with also in the evenings doing strength and conditioning coaching for the Sirius Rugby Club in the Boerland Leagues. And there, the leaderships, I mean, guys coming from all different backgrounds. I mean, one of the chairpersons of the club was a principal of a school. We had another guy who was an attorney in town. Then you get guys that are that own farms, and guys who are actually working on those farms, playing together in the same team. Guys that were working in factories, playing in the same team as guys that were managers in those or engineers in those same factories. And it's people coming down from different backgrounds and interacting and working together towards a single good. And as you say, being able to have mentors in a club. I mean, if you have a guy who's an attorney in the town, a guy who's a principal of one of the schools, those type of leadership figures that actually, because of their love of the game, giving back into their structures. I mean, what type of leadership structures will somebody that's a normal, as you say, a normal farm worker, in knowing the socioeconomic background of South Africa, where else would they usually get the chance to have somebody of that background mentor them?
Yeah, no, I fully agree with you. So, you know, so that's the first point that we basically making, is a rugby club is an environment for people from different communities and different backgrounds to get together, spend some time together, get to know each other, play some rugby, have a beer together, you know, in a safe and controlled environment. You know, so the second point I want to raise now is, you know, everybody does dumb stuff. Now, I won't go into a long broken down story about it, but I've done some dumb stuff in my career, which has tarnished the game of rugby. And Monday morning, I got the telephone call. Sorry, I'm required at the club. please come in. I got sat down, had to do a letter of apology, and the one thing that comes from that is that incident within the club now is associated with me, and it sticks with me every time I go back to the club. Somebody will bring it up, and somebody will take a jab at me. I've got to wear it. It was my incident. I stuffed it up. I got too emotional. I got carried away. The passion was, the emotion got hold of me, and I was in the wrong, and I had to own up to it. So what I'm saying is everybody does something that's dumb, but fortunately, what we have is we've got rules and regulations that have been put in place by a governing body, and then you have extra rules and regulations that are placed on top of that by the club that you belong to or by the union you belong to. So if something happens like what Joe Marler did, the laws and the regulations get meted out within the board, and what resulted now is he received a 10-week ban. And and now I just want to add to that. Now he's threatening to quit the game because he received a ban, or for what other reason. You know what? If he doesn't want to play rugby, he should quit. He quit once before already, dropped his teammates. This to me tells me he's an individual, and rugby is not an individual sport. I don't really want to take a dip at this oak, but this guy, he's tarnished the game of rugby. It's not the culture of rugby that's tarnished it. It's an individual through his actions that's hurt our game. And now it comes out that he wants to retire at the age of 27, 28. The game doesn't need somebody like that. The game will go on without people like that seeking attention, because rugby is an attention-seeking game.
Well, I mean, I think, as you said, if just summarizing the actions or as you say, in this case, Joe Marler is not responding to the punishment handing out, but he's more reacting to that, and the reaction is more almost an indication of somebody, as we'll say, is thinks that they're bigger than the game. And I mean, even just taking back, like any time a player in a professional, from a grassroots level to a professional level, has tried to act as above the game, it's actually that same rugby culture that actually either gets rid of them, gets them out of the game, or brings them back down to earth. I mean, there's examples, millions of examples. I mean, somebody that we can see that was disciplined by a certain culture, by the culture within the game, and actually got reprimanded numerous times, still did not actually listen to that, and ended up losing his professional career due to stupid actions. Somebody like Zach Guilford, I mean, we'd still remember he was a talented wing, a very talented All Black. I mean, his career was ended way too young because of his own personal reasons and reasons where having a drink for him was much bigger than actually tying in line and living to the, as you say, the ethos of being an All Black at that stage.
No, you're actually tickling a memory there. That's actually a great point there. In Richard McCaw's book, he actually brings up that incident. He brings it up in two parts. The first part was, before each season, the leadership group would sit down and they'd create what they called ministries. And you'd have the Ministry of Justice, the Ministry of Party, the Ministry of Travel, and each one of those pockets of leadership within the team were responsible for something. And here's the ticker. Zach Guilford in that year was put in charge of the party bus. Now with hindsight, at the initial thought was, okay, we're giving this guy responsible. Make sure you get the beers to the change room after the game. Make sure we got good music on the bus after the game. All that kind of stuff actually exacerbated and had a negative effect on the player. So that's an example of the leadership actually getting it wrong. And then post was it when the Springboks beat the All Blacks 4 times in a row, then Graham Henry and Steve Anson and McCall, they all sat down and they realized they needed to change the culture within the team, because it was more of a drinking culture than a rugby culture, if, to put it bluntly. And that is when we saw the evolution of the All Black side to become more of this rugby dominated side instead of what the party was afterwards.
Yeah.
And yeah, we can definitely look at the dark side of culture in rugby. Is there's when I started at False Bay Rugby Club, it was known as the drinking club with a rugby problem. And, it took 10 years of hard work to turn that around. They ended up winning the Super A and going on to win the Gold Cup, so it takes time to change the culture within the team. But that takes leadership, and you can't put it down to this thing called lad culture. If you come to me and you say, "Oh, lad culture in this club is ridiculous," to me, I'm going to hear the leadership in that club is poor and needs to take a long look at itself. To me, that's the actual issue, than actually blaming some made-up concept because you didn't feel invited to a club. Because I've never been to a club where I've not felt invited.
Well, I think it comes down to leadership exactly on that. What's the leadership structure like in the club?
Yeah, that's sorry to interrupt there. So this would be our third point is leadership.
Yes. So yes, getting back to that on the leadership point, and again using it as an example as to how that would actually impact on the direction a club goes into. I mean, now picture an example: a 22-year-old guy out of university, bunch of players that are majority older than him. You walk in the club as the strength and conditioning coach for the club for the season. The first action you get is you tell the guys, "Okay, I need you all to do a 2.4K for me. I need to take times." I mean, as a 20, if you as a first team rugby player, let's say age 30, and you have a 22-year-old that comes to you and says, I need you to run around the track," what would your first reaction usually be on that?
Yeah, me, Flip, I'd be in front of the queue. Come, let's get it done, because I want to be there.
Well, that's exactly so first thing I get is the biggest guy in the team, or the captain, looks at me and says, "Okay, guys, this is what we need to do." And by just standing around, being your first session with a group of guys as a 22-year-old, which was, I think at that stage, probably not a lot of 22-year-olds were doing strength and conditioning for clubs at that stage. And you get the captain looks at you and says, "Okay, great, that's what we're going to do." Next moment, all 50 guys in the team are going around the field without even having to be asked. Just because the captain looked and said, "Okay, if this is what he wants, we need to do 2.4Ks." They're not even understanding the method behind the madness, but that's what we need to do. And I mean, from there, my job was just that much easier for the year, because of a simple of the leadership saying, "Well, okay, this is what we need to do to achieve the greater good." Doesn't matter how old the guy or where he's being new in the club, not knowing how old he is, but if that's what we need to do, and that's what we're going to do. And no culture of trying to, as you say, try to be funny about it, or trying to upstage it, or doing, like you say, the Marla type incidents of "I'm bigger than this." Just the leadership saying, if that's the goal and we run with that, so be it.
Yeah. Just listening to you talk there, like now, if we're looking at Joe Marler, and he's in a professional setup, they get paid to play rugby. They're rugby players 24/7. If you go down to the amateur level, it should actually be a lot harder to get everybody's buy-in, because the one guy might be stuck at work, he might be working overtime, he might be a plumber and he's got a call out and he needs to go do that call out, because that's his livelihood. That's what's going to put money in his pocket and food on the table. So, the culture within a team should be so much easier to set up for a professional rugby team than it is for an amateur side. And I can tell you now, I have seen plenty of clubs in the Western Cape get it right. On the other hand, I've also seen many clubs get it wrong. But again, it's not down to lad culture. It's down to the leadership within the club that has failed the players and has failed the players in the game. You brought up an interesting point, where people get worked out if they're not part of the club. One of the interesting things is if you rock up at a club and you come across as somebody that actually probably shouldn't be there or whatever, or you annoy the hell out of people, or you always complain about doing fitness, or you complain about fine session, or you complain about initiation, or you complain about the type of welcoming drink the club might give you. Slowly what happens is the club works you out because you don't get invited to the Thursday night braai function post practice drinks. You don't get invited to go out to the club after the game. You stop getting the SMS of good luck for today's game, and you slowly get worked out of the club because that's a kind of way of the club telling you don't fit in here. It is at no time have I've seen, and if it has happened, people have been taken on about it. At no time have people been actually told, listen, unless it's obviously been something really, really controversial, to leave the club. It's always been more a person gets pushed slowly to the outside by being excluded from the activities of the club. Secondly, I've had plenty of people in the club that, so for example, here's an example. The one guy, he refuses to drink beer. It makes him sick, but he'll drink a brandy and Coke. So every post-match fines, there's a brandy and Coke for him for his fine for whatever he did on the field or whatever he did in the week's practice. Then we had a few other guys who didn't drink at all. They got given a plain Coke. They were never ever forced to drink an alcoholic beverage if they weren't drinkers. And thirdly, we had guys who rocked up for practice, rocked up for the game, had their fines drink, and then went home because they're family men. And, on Monday, they would be back at practice, grinding it hard with us. And there would be a laugh and a chirp and say, oh, come on, Dave, surely you can stay for a drink. And, once in a while, when it wasn't his job to do parenting and the wife was having a night in, he would stay for an extra hour or two, and he was an integral member of the team, and we embraced him, and there was always good laughs around him. So if somebody rocks up at a club and you think there's this lad culture, you're seeing a small element of what the club is actually what happens within the club. So that's basically what I wanted to say on this topic. I must admit I had a little bit of that social media rage when I read all that stuff, and fortunately I kept my fingers to myself instead of partaking and debating with individuals on the topic via Twitter and all that stuff.
Yeah, no, I think I think, as you say, social media. I feel 2020 they tend to get it more wrong than right, and I mean this is one situation where once you start unpacking the facts or anecdotally actually getting involved with people that's been involved in club structures, you actually start to realize that hang on, it's only social media has been scraping the surface of and they've been scraping they've been scraping off the rough edges as guys involved that's been involved in doing stupid things and generalizing that, which has been a problem. I mean stupid analogies like the one analogy, getting back to the Marla incident, was something stupid like, yeah, I don't go to your workplace and grab you by the genitals, do I? And because it's a professional sport. And you're thinking, but hang on, it's in that situation, yes, okay, Joe Marler and Alan Wynne Jones might know each other personally, but it was done it was done as attention seeking, and
Yeah.
it's
And
been
it's
taken out of.
it's banned by the laws, and
Yeah,
it's banned by laws, and there's a punishment that gets meted out. And guess what? In civil society, somebody who does that, there's laws against it, and there's laws in place to protect citizens from that type of behavior. So,
and yeah, and he got punished for that. And it's, I mean, if this culture was really that toxic, I mean, the punishment wouldn't have been that harsh. They wouldn't have come down on him as harsh as what it's been suggested at the moment.
yeah, and and there's no issue with the punishment that was handed down. And then you've got other people on the other side of saying, yeah, but high tackles are being only getting 3 weeks. High tackles aren't done to, or first thing is we're saying malicious types of high tackles where players are reckless should be higher on the ban scale. But tackles are being meted out, the punishment for tackles are being meted out because the players are transgressing, but they're not doing it to to get attention. They're not doing it to rile up the other player. In the case of what Joe Marler did,
Yeah, I
so
mean, Joe Marler play was stopped. I think the whistle had gone. Play was stopped,
yeah, there was a
and
bit of fisticuffs going on, and he took a
yeah,
cheap shot.
it was more a way of as you said, was more of an attention grabbing, pardon the pun, situation there. And I mean, if he had given him a, like, as you say, if it was a clear punch to the face, he would have probably still got 10 weeks on that. So trying to compare a high tackle to something that's malicious and open, I mean, a high tackle usually happens in the heat of play. And I mean, going back to our CTE podcast, it almost gets on that, it gets judged by that situation. But I mean, a high tackle sometimes in the as a reflex action isn't always as malicious as what as what the intention is it to
And
be. But I mean,
tackles are legal in the game. It's the
yeah,
execution that gets blown if it's a poor tackle. So
yeah, getting back
that
to that, but
that comparison to a high tackle and what the dude did is two different. It's two different incidents. They on two different scales.
yeah, it's, as you say, chalk and cheese. It's like trying to compare apples with bananas, and it doesn't make that the argument just doesn't hold up there. So I think in terms of getting the understanding the camaraderie and cultures of rugby clubs itself, to have them painted out as being this culture of toxicity and breeding and the breeding ground for problems, I think it is unfair and unjust at the moment.
Yeah. All right. So we've definitely sided with the concept that lab culture is a made up term for people to try and justify why rugby clubs are either bad or the culture within a club is bad. But we've tried to show that it's more down to poor leadership. And while we were sitting here talking, I remember a team. I'm going to mention their name. They were known as the Wolf Pack, and they played in our social league. And it would actually be amiss if I didn't mention them. Now, if there ever was a team that personified the term lad culture, it was this team. They were a good. Were a group of players who were good rugby players, talented rugby players. They got together, but the culture within that team and the type of non-existent leadership within that team folded within 3 years. Yeah, and the team that I played for and the club I was part of has been going for 10 years and is still they've been going for now for, I think it's 11 or 12 years now. And the False Bay itself has been going for many years. And for a club and a team to run as long as it does, that comes down to good leadership. And I'm harping on leadership because it's the one thing that society and any organization really needs to embrace, positive, good leadership. And and it's seen in companies, and it's like the one thing I can say is, if you look at a rugby club, it almost represents real life. It represents your community. And if things are struggling in your community, or if things are struggling around, you'll see that the club will struggle as well. And then, but as soon as you've got a good company and somebody who's positive, he's very active, he's got a positive attitude, he's a good leader, he's also a good follower, he knows when to make a good decision, he knows when to give good inputs, or to accept good inputs and to make a change. All of a sudden, the company starts thriving, the community starts thriving, and the club starts thriving. And it just doesn't always come off. But any positive leadership is good leadership compared to having terrible leadership.
Yeah, no, I agree with you, Dan. You can see the examples in a lot of the, you say, Western Province clubs. I mean, I remember in high school, remembering teams like Falspan Hamilton's being Super League B clubs, but then something just clicked, and as you say, good leadership, and look where those clubs are today. And then there are a few other clubs who were 10 years ago were fantastic clubs, but due to certain people leaving the clubs or stepping down, that actually just fell that it fell a bit by the wayside. Yeah. I mean, examples of that: Tygerberg lost their way for a few years. I know Helderberg, I'm not sure where they are now at the moment. I know they used to be a good Super League A club and had to take their knock when a lot of people left. So, I mean, as you said, the leadership does make a big difference to a club and the culture and what comes out onto the field.
Yeah, no, I fully agree with you. Richard, thanks for checking in with me again tonight, and we'll be definitely have some more discussions in the upcoming weeks. Have you been able to get hold of the video clip the video that we'll be previewing next week?
Yes, I've been able to get all of it.
Awesome. What do you think so far?
I've only downloaded it. I haven't watched it yet.
All right.
That's a job for the upcoming lockdown weekend.
Yeah. I've got it set ready for Sunday. I've watched it twice already, but I'm definitely going to be having a keen eye on it this weekend, making the notes, and then hopefully we can get somebody in with us on that one, and have a proper look at that movie and see what we can learn from it.
Perfect.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Send regards to the missus and the puppies over there.
Will do. Thanks, man.
Cheers.
Keep well. Cheers, André. Bye.